Well, we are up and running, and it is a beautiful Monday somewhere in the universe, and I am connecting over the ethers, over the airwaves with young Stephen, and it is a beautiful, beautiful day. The bright light is filtering through from outside, and there's almost kind of a ghostly presence in that light behind me today. How are you this morning, Stephen?
I'm doing well. Feeling that when you said, young Steven, I was like, huh, interesting, because I always feel like that label of you feel like such an old soul is what people have said to me, and like I feel that, and at the same time, I happen to be in this young body, so it's an interesting paradox.
Well, I think as we start to go backwards in our spiritual growth, and the spiritual journey is not a journey forward. You're not going anywhere that you can anticipate. The journey is backwards to our essential truth, and going back, in the most literal way to who we were before we were born, and that is eternal youth. And just watch a baby. I like talking about babies because when we watch babies, we get a real core sense of who we actually are, that beauty, that innocence, that purity, that love. So when I speak in terms of you being young, I'm not talking about your body. I am talking about that eternal spirit that is youthful innocence that is breaking through into the material world.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, it must be why I've had such a profound resonance actually with the Peter Pan myth and this whole idea of Neverland, right? And kind of reminds me of the happy dream, as the course talks about, sort of just being like, we're all children here playing this big game of hide and go seek with ourselves. Will we find the God within kind of question?
Yes, that is a part of the game, but there's also the other side of Peter Pan, which is the escapist, the escape artist who's not willing to confront his angst and his inner pain and his sense of abandonment. So he lives in that false sense of childhood, but it is the ego's childhood and not the pure innocence of our higher consciousness. So
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I think we're getting way too profound here. So we should just segue over to our lessons for today, and we are in fact reviewing lessons 29 through 35. Is that correct?
That's right.
And this starts off with a really good one because this is actually designed to get you out of the literal aspect of materialism, of material reality. And so this lesson number 29, God is in everything I see. And then, on the surface level, that sounds like, oh, well, God's in this decaying, tree down at the end of the block, and God is in that rotting roadkill of that squirrel that was running across the road. So God is compromised all over the place if we take this in that literal sense of God has somehow managed to enter into and become part of matter.
Right. Or God is in your ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend who's trying to start an argument with you.
Yes, well, sometimes they succeed, and sometimes they are blunted in their efforts. But uh, the overall concept here is to help us to lift our sense of the identification of God out of the material realm. Says the idea for today explains why you can see all purpose in everything. It explains why nothing is separate by itself or in itself. And it explains why nothing you see means anything. In fact, it explains every idea we have used thus far and all subsequent ones as well. today's idea is a whole basis for vision. Okay, so where does that take us?
Oh, it feels like, well, the original idea of separation is when we started dividing all these separate, separate parts from God, being the tiny man idea of separating from ourselves and from God. And so when you look at a table and say, well, God is in this table, it's not really like literally like in that table, but it's like it's helping us to loosen our association with seeing the separate object, right? Is that what you think it's saying?
That's definitely one aspect of it. The other aspect of it is, and here we go back to, one of those themes that comes up in the course, in the text a couple of times, where it tells us that words are but symbols of symbols. And when we start to penetrate that idea, we begin to come to the understanding that the original thing itself was an idea in the mind. And so you have this idea of a table, and then you want to make it manifest, because we're living in this realm of separation. So in the process of building the table, you have made the idea become manifest as a physical object, and you can set your lunch down there and make your life complete. But now you have a neighbor who's on the telephone and says, well, what were you doing all afternoon? And you don't have a word yet for the table, so you have to invent a word. And so that's how we get all these degrees of separation, is that the word is 2 degrees away from the original thought. And that word is the table. So again, it's helping us to come to the realization that everything that we perceive as being separate is all one thought. That thought is creation, and that thought exists in the mind of God. And we are also part of that thought. So whenever we're bringing things out of the realm of the mind and making them physically manifest, we are creating that first wall of interruption between the God self and the creation that the God self has created, and the material world that we're experiencing. And then we go that third step of giving it a name, creating a word for it. So this once again compounds that sense of individuation, but also separation. So if I say, well, I just finished building a table, well, in your mind, that table may be, a beautiful Haviland table that was built in the Renaissance, and it's got all the curly squigglies, but in actual fact, you built a table that was just, basically bare wood and 4 legs. So you can see how all of this becomes convoluted, and it just, it tumbles into madness. And that's what creates the dysfunction in this realm. So this lesson is getting us back to that recognition that God doesn't live inside the table. The table exists as a concept in the mind of God. And that's where our completion is to go back and to dwell in the mind of God. So does that make sense?
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. That's a great reminder. And it really brings me back to returning to that state of course, it's sort of that awakening feeling of I'm in the mind of God right now. And so how could it be different? How could it be any other way? Like the Trevor Hall song, which is, I love that song too. Yeah, it's absolutely. And then we're united in creation in the mind of God when we return back to that state of being in that perfect love. But we made that conscious decision to go unconscious and separate everything out.
Exactly. So then we get up to lesson 30, and it kind of reiterates everything I was just blithering about there. Because when we get to lesson 30, it says, God is in everything I see because God is in my mind. So this is taking us back to the understanding that we step away from the object, we step away from the material reality, and we go back to the recognition that everything exists as a thought, and that thought dwells within the mind of God. So this is, giving us a beautiful sense of having arrived at this entry point where we are able to reclaim access to our understanding of what creation is and who we actually in fact are.
Oh, absolutely. It says in that lesson too that today we are trying to use the new kind of projection. We are not attempting to get rid of what we do not like by seeing it outside. Instead, we are trying to see in the world what is in our minds and what we want to recognize is there. Thus are we trying to join with what we see rather than keeping it apart from us.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of creating a reality check for us, because once again, it's causing us to recognize that opening line from the Course: all that is real, God created, and everything else is an illusion. So as we start to recognize what is in our mind, our personal mind, rather than the mind of God, we can start to sort out, or we can ask the Holy Spirit to help us identify the truth from the illusion. And so if we're seeing a lot of pain and suffering and blood and misery, we want to be able to present those things to the Holy Spirit so that we can reclaim our true vision and share our mind once again with God. And that's what the whole Course is about, is re-experiencing the mind of God, which is not a split mind. Our mind is split. We have the conscious and the subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where all of our problems stem from. So as we're moving along here, lesson 30, things are really amping up, and it's helping us to reclaim that very fundamental understanding that we have claimed a mind that is separate from God. And now in order to heal that mind, we have to allow ourselves that silence where God can enter in and patch up the breakage that has gone on in our own belief system.
All right. And in the way that we're maybe resisting with what's placed in front of us too, because everything that's placed in front of us is there because the Holy Spirit is wanting us to look at it so that we can heal it and we can forgive it and we can, ultimately, move past it. So it's saying, to me, it sounds like it's saying to join with it. You don't want to be in resistance. Don't be in resistance with what's placed in front of you, because that's a part of your own mind.
Yes, because that's the easiest way to identify truth is to observe, is to face the dragon, as it were, and see if the dragon is real. So this whole process is really a process of shifting our identity back once again to our spiritual being, to our non-corporeal being, and to re-embrace what God created, which is eternal and perfect, and to look at all of the things that we believe we have created and realize their nothingness, so that we're not battling them, so that we're not in fear of them, so that we're not hiding them from our own sight. But we're looking at them and saying, well, now that was kind of silly. Why did I allow myself to accept that?
Mm-hmm. And then go on to lesson 31. It says, I am not the victim of the world I see. And I really love this lesson because it's one that just comes to my mind a lot of the time whenever that ego mind tries to like take over and starts to say that this happened, these events happen, this circumstances happen, and I was hurt by these people, and I was victimized and all that. And this is a great lesson to sort of like just snap us out of that awareness and back into our divine awareness, where we go, I'm not the victim of the world I see. I mean, this is self-manufactured. This is coming from my mind.
It is. It absolutely is. And, it says generally today's idea is the introduction of your declaration of release. And that is an interesting idea in unto itself, because really the things that we think are hounding us and are limiting us and are confining us, and more to the point, punishing us, are things that we have given that power to. So we basically have empowered circumstances to, to create chaos in our lives and to give us limitation and to make our lives a process of struggle. So this is that first stage in reclaiming your power in the midst of all the turmoil that you imagine is happening to you. And this is a journey. One of the first steps is the birth of faith. You have to have faith in order for that faith to grow into confidence. See, and when you are confident, then we go back to what Jesus was saying about that little teeny tiny mustard seed. If you have as much faith, which has become confidence, as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, I cast thee out, and it will jump into the sea. Of course, by that time, you hopefully will be evolved enough to realize that you don't need to throw the mountain into the sea, but you have the awareness that you have the power within you to make anything your reality, anywhere, at any time, in any part of the universe. And that's what we have to do, is to recognize that by taking responsibility for all the miscreations that we have created that we are allowing to torment us.
That brings up some great stuff when we really swallow that statement for ourselves and can feel that empowerment for ourselves, because then you start to question, well, if you're getting negative feedback, if you're feeling that something in your reality is negative, you're feeling attacked, you're feeling hurt, you're feeling victimized, you're feeling punished, then you can ask yourself, well, why am I creating this for myself if I can create literally anything?
And how am I creating it? The more you think about it, the more you resist it, the more you are, in fact, putting juice into it. So the minute you can step back and pull the plug, all the juice goes out of it. So that's why we really have to put our attention on that idea of not putting any power, positive or negative, into circumstances around us. Because every time you declare something to be good, that other half of your mind has created that awareness of something that is bad, because we are living in duality. So we have to stop oscillating from one side to the other, get back to the center, and just become the observer. And most of the time, the easiest way to get rid of the things that have been tormenting you is to turn them over to the Holy Spirit, to arrive at that point where you're not resisting it, you're not fearing it, you're not desiring it, you're not loving it. You're merely observing it and saying, okay, Holy Spirit, if this is right for me, I'll continue to work with it. If this is wrong, then I give it to you, and you will to one degree or another, begin to step into a state of release from those circumstances.
Absolutely true. And then we get to lesson 32 here, and continuation basically of the last one, saying, I've invented the world I see. It says, today we are continuing to develop the theme of cause and effect. You are not the victim of the world you see because you invented it. Really clear and simple, it seems like.
That is very clear and to the point. And, you know, again, it's where does the invention come from? So in that previous section there, I was talking about faith becoming confidence. Because if you are confident, you will succeed at whatever you are seeking to manifest. The more you believe something, the more it becomes your reality. Well, this is the converse side of that. If you have doubt, that doubt will grow to become fear. And so, you know, tumbling backwards from doubt to fear reinforces it. It turns it into a monster for us. So really we have to recognize that invention, in this sense, does not necessarily mean that you are conjuring up an idea of, I'm going to have a car wreck and trying to make it happen. But your fear of having a car wreck can make it happen if you are living in that state where your doubts are in the process of growing into and becoming fear. So again, we have to get back to that neutral space, and that's what all these lessons are trying to help us do, is to stop that perpetual fight or flight or fear or whatever syndrome, however you want to envision it. That's where we are creating the chaos in our existence.
Yeah, and something that comes to mind is that so much of that is just so unconscious for us. If we have that feeling of guilt inside for feeling separate from God, then, you know, these situations seem to appear in our lives that are there to wake us up, to show us that, hey, you have nothing to actually fear because you're still with God right now.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. And, you know, that's why I think it's important for people to pay attention to messages that are going on around them. Because a lot of times we get caught in different stages of the dream, and we actually, from a higher vantage point, the Christ that we actually are sends us a messenger. It can be, you know, an animal spirit when you're out walking through the woods. It can be a dream. It can be somebody who, you know, says something at precisely the right minute so that it hits a nerve ending within you. So we have to be willing to look at and honor the messages that are around us in order for us to reaffirm and reconnect with our own truth, with the Christ within us, and with the Holy Spirit. And that is the way we disassemble the things that we have created.
And that leads really well into the next lesson, saying, lesson 33, there is another way of looking at the world. So whatever way we've been accustomed to seeing it through these eyes of, you know, I just like get this picture of being this like downtrodden, you know, feeling separated from God, feeling guilty, feeling, you know, grief ridden. And then this lesson comes along and says, there's another way of looking at the world. You can look at it in a different way. It will change the way you experience it.
And the way that we approach this, you know, is first we recognize that what we're seeing externally is going on internally. And then we start to ask ourselves, is this coming from a place of love? Or is this coming from some other motivation? Now, the place of love is going to be, once again, the Christ within you. The other motivating factor will be the ego. And the ego is a, you know, it's a game of smoke and mirrors. And it's always trying to enchant you and seduce you. So you really have to be willing to look at the core nature of everything that's going on. And if it's love, you'll recognize it and you can embrace it. If it's not, you can say, oh, that's not real, and step away from it.
It seems to take that level of faith and confidence that you mentioned in order to be willing to say that, in order to, you know, curiosity killed the cat kind of thing. You know, you want to venture into the smoke and mirrors and go through the ego's way of doing things. You can do that until you eventually realize, you know, there's a better way to go about this.
And that is true. And that leads us right into lesson 34, which is the thing that we're trying to achieve. The real reason that 99.9% of the people who are working with the Course are working with the Course is because they have that desire to be at peace with their life. And lesson 34 gives us the necessary tool to work with here. I could see peace instead of this. And that really is the one thing that none of us have a consistent connection to, our own inner peace. So it says the idea for today begins to describe the conditions that prevail in the other way of seeing. Peace of mind is clearly an internal matter. It must begin with your own thoughts. We're back to the mind and our thoughts, and then extend outward. It is from your peace of mind that a peaceful perception of the world arises. And this would give us a little bit of an innuendo here that the more you see, the more you feed peace into the world around you, the more the world around you will begin to reconform and reflect that back to you. And this morning I had kind of an adventure. I had to run over and pick up some things at a place about 10 miles away. And I was driving basically through forest preserves for 2/3 of the journey. And as I was going through that region and really witnessing nature around me, these beautiful trees and the brush and the yada, 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 I felt this serenity that really welled up and filled my being. And I realized that this was not something that I was trying to make happen. It was something when I diverted my thoughts about, oh, look at this, and oh, look at that, and oh my God, this is falling apart. As soon as I stopped that dialogue and just looked at the trees, just started to witness the environment, that peace came forth. It became a presence within me. And that's what the journey really is all about, is reclaiming that peace and arriving at a place where we can experience it on demand.
Yeah, that's a beautiful experience. That sort of, like, I just want to say that the way that I've been experiencing the Holy Spirit, the way that I currently experience the Holy Spirit is it's very subtle, very still, very quiet, not commanding, not barking orders, not trying to like tell me which way I have to go. It's just very quiet, and comes in when I'm not really paying a whole lot of attention to my thoughts, or if I'm just observing them. That the Spirit just comes in, and it's just, you know, it gives me that feeling of peace.
Exactly. And when people are talking about meditation and everything else, this really is where we're trying to go with meditation, is we are trying to arrive at a point where we are merely witnessing. We're not judging. We're not, generating ideas. We're not thinking. We're simply witnessing. And as we witness our existence, as we witness our surroundings, as we witness the people in our lives, as we witness, the mundane aspect of living, we arrive at that place of being at peace with life itself. So it's a very, very powerful process. And you don't have to spend 20 hours a day sitting in a cave with your eyes closed trying to attain this elevated state of consciousness. It's a drawing in, a stilling, and then merely to witness. And that's so easy that our ego makes it virtually impossible for us to attain, so we really have to be willing to let go of the ego. That is the core element here.
Absolutely. Brings us to our final lesson here. My mind is part of God's. I am very holy. Today's idea does not describe the way you see yourself now. It does, however, describe what vision will show you. It is difficult for anyone who thinks he is in this world to believe this of himself. Yet the reason he thinks he is in the world is because he does not believe it. There you have again that confusion between the cause and effect being clarified and put back in place at the beginning of this lesson, saying the reason you believe you're in this world is because you don't believe you're holy.
Yeah, so you've forgotten your heritage. And this actually is the whole journey of A Course in Miracles, is for us to reclaim the sanctity of our being. But in order to do that, this is where the banana peel hits the sidewalk and all of us take a spill. You have to also give that acceptance to everybody on the freaking planet. So you can't have these guys over here who are left out.
Even in different star systems.
Even in different quantum realities. It is all one life. And so the minute we have a hostile thought towards somebody else, the minute we want to push them out of God's kingdom, that's when we have created the Grand Canyon in our own life between us and God. So this is one of those little jabs that we have to look at. It is the scorpion side of A Course in Miracles, because there is that stinger in there that says, in order for you to reclaim your union with God, you have to be willing to open that gate to every single being that exists anywhere in eternity.
That's kind of a big pill to swallow.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
Yeah, because we have lots of reasons the ego makes up for why other people are to be feared and to be banished.
Yes, and to be villainized, and but most important of all, the effect of, look how holy and superior I am when I'm surrounded by these idiots here. So it is kind of an interesting journey, and we do have to humble ourselves minute by minute, hour by hour, and day by day. And that's the only way you're going to make it through.
Yeah, it's totally beautiful. And the I am very holy is actually a humbling statement.
It is. It is. It's reducing you from the ego to the majesty of the Christ. Wow, that's that is an astonishing transformation.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, if there's anything else you wanted to add, Chris, I guess we'll wrap this one up and resume next week.
Yes, absolutely. This was a good chat, and hopefully people will enjoy it, appreciate it, and share it, because I think that we've got some juicy stuff here that people can sink their teeth into. And I'm just getting obnoxious with all of these images that I'm generating here. So I guess I will say have a fabulous week, Stephen, and I'll see you in 7 days. You too, Chris. We're cooking right along, so looking forward to it. Take care. Bye. Okay, bye.